Hello and welcome to Business Central Manufacturing Overview and Demo. I am your presenter. My name is Rob Jolliffe. I am a manufacturing engineer who worked in manufacturing from a very young age, breaking, I'm sure, child labor laws, and have continued working in manufacturing primarily as an expert in ERP systems and most recently an expert in Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. Today's agenda, I'm going to do a quick overview and introduction to the company, Sabre Limited, talk about what Business Central is, discuss different types of manufacturing, have a general discussion about those types and how they're relevant, talk about some of Business Central's core features, present a list of add-ons for Business Central that are kind of necessary within a manufacturing implementation, and then do a software overview. So, introduction. Sabre Limited is our company. We are experts in manufacturing. We've been in business since 1998. The last 10 years have been in business, actually more 12 years have been in business, focused on Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central and its predecessor. It was known under the name Dynamics Nav before. Sabre is entirely focused on manufacturing, and I point that out because companies that have a vertical focus on a particular area or a particular industry tend to have a deeper depth of knowledge than companies that sell Business Central that are more horizontal in their nature and sell to many industries. And I think the biggest difference is that those with a vertical focus bring more of a, in Sabre's case, manufacturing consulting skill set to the project and have an ability to bring best practices forward in a more in a deeper way than horizontal partners are able to. And to be honest with you, horizontal partners often know more about the ERP software and have a deeper knowledge of its full suite of capabilities than the vertical focus partners, because they're selling into many industries that use features that manufacturers wouldn't use, and so therefore they actually know more about the software. So, what is Business Central? Business Central is an ERP system. If you're unfamiliar with ERP, it stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. The best way to understand it is it's a database that combines all of the different features and functionality that a business needs to operate from an operational point of view. Obviously, things like engineering, CAD software is not included in Business Central or in ERP systems. There are other, what I call software classes or software categories, like an e-commerce site, which would be a website where you have a shopping cart. Amazon would be an example of that. Graphic arts design software. There's many different software categories. ERP combines generally accounting software, MRP software, and CRM software, as well as sometimes warehouse management software, into one integrated solution that's designed for operations of a business. Dynamics 365 is a product line from Microsoft. So it's not an individual product. It's an entire product line, like Cadillac is a product line, and Business Central is just one product within that product line. So there are sister products within here. For instance, the Dynamics 365 sales product and the Dynamics 365 field service that integrate with Business Central and can communicate and can use Business Central essentially as the accounting side of their requirements. There are other products in this list, including finance, which is right above Business Central, and supply chain management, which is 3 below Business Central, which are alternative ERPs. So Microsoft has 2 ERPs in the Dynamics 365 product line. Business Central is the small medium business ERP. Finance and supply chain management combined are the enterprise level ERP system. Now, one thing to note about Business Central is I categorize it as a modern cloud ERP, and for me to consider it a modern cloud ERP, it has to meet certain minimum requirements. One of them is it's hosted by the vendor, in this case Microsoft, and it's serverless. You don't have to buy a server. You don't need IT people. It's upgraded and patched automatically by Microsoft. So again, you don't need IT people who are logging into the system and doing updates for you. It's device agnostic. So if you want to run it on a MacBook or you want to run it on a Dell PC, it doesn't really matter, or even a Chromebook. It is mobile enabled. So if you have a mobile device like an iPhone or an Android or a tablet, you can use the system on there. Now, obviously, you can't do high volume data entry on a phone, but you can use the software, and more or less all the features of the software are available with some limits, of course. And then it's got an app store. So again, like an iPhone or a Samsung Galaxy or an Android phone, you have a Google Play Store, or you have an Apple App Store from which you can download apps and install them in the software. And those apps are installed into the ERP system, not separate from the ERP system. So they are built to run in that system, and they recognize all of the features of the ERP within those apps. In case you're interested, I did a breakdown and wrote an article which is found on Sabre Limited's website on the top small business cloud ERP lists. What I did was I analyzed the market, looked at all of the resources that were rating ERP systems, excluded all of the ones that were selling any of these ERP systems. So I looked for independent sources, and I found 12 articles and papers that reviewed. And what I found was, of those 12, 11 of them marked Business Central as a top ERP solution for consideration. Also, 11 of them, interestingly, selected Acumatica as a top solution. I was very focused on manufacturing, so if the list was specific to manufacturing, I selected it in preference to other lists. The other thing about the list is it is small business focused, and small business is defined a little bit later. So there are very few ERP systems that are actually in that true cloud ERP, cloud manufacturing ERP category, as I mentioned. Acumatica is definitely one of them, NetSuite, Business Central. But there aren't very many because most of them don't satisfy all those criteria that I mentioned. Another one that I believe is in it is SAP Business One. I believe that is also part of it. Now, I have Sage Intacct listed here. It is a cloud ERP. It is a true cloud ERP. It is not very well known in the manufacturing space, though. So NetSuite, Acumatica, SAP Business One, and Business Central would probably be the top manufacturing ones. Business Central is suited in what Microsoft would consider a small business range, which is between $5 million of revenue and $250 million of revenue. It's capable of running up to, I would say, $1 billion of revenue. I'm aware of companies that are running it that have 2,000 users, which is a very large company. Most companies don't need anywhere near that many ERP users that I would talk to. And so it is very scalable if your business is growing. So one of the things I want to talk about is there are different types of manufacturing. I refer to these sometimes as modes of manufacturing. And once again, on our website, I've written an article explaining this. But there are 7 of these modes of manufacturing or types of manufacturing, and then there's one extra one. So the discrete manufacturing is a category of manufacturing in which you're making a product and the product can stand on its own, like a coffee mug. An empty coffee mug can stand there. A process manufacturing generally refers to a category of manufacturing where the product is not discrete and cannot stand on its own. The coffee in the coffee mug, if you were a coffee manufacturer, or even the coffee grounds in a bag, would be more process manufacturing. The process manufacturing is making something in batches typically, and it's making something that is often a liquid or powder that, again, you can't just put a pile of it on the floor, but you can put a coffee mug on the floor. It'll stay together, whereas product doesn't stay together. In the discrete manufacturing space in Business Central, the first 4 categories, make to stock, make to order, job shop, and assemble to order, Business Central has strong out-of-the-box capabilities for that. We'll talk about add-ons in a few minutes because many customers still decide to add add-ons, but there's nothing to prevent you, if you're in small, medium business of these types, using Business Central out of the box. The configure to order and engineer to order, they do require add-ons. There is not a product configurator within Business Central, and the projects module of Business Central is close but not quite complete for the purposes of engineer order manufacturing. And process manufacturing requires a much more often sophisticated add-on out of the box, and really requires a lot of extra capabilities. Whereas the configured order, engineered order need a little bit of add-on capability. The process is a little bit more of a big change. And then I mentioned that there's +1 as far as the 7 types of manufacturing. That is mixed mode, and mixed mode is when 2 or more of these are combined together in one company. Sabre are experts in all of the areas of discrete manufacturing that were listed on the list. So that would include make to order, make to stock, job shop, assembled to order, configured to order, and engineered to order. Those are our areas of expertise. We specifically choose not to pursue food and pharmaceutical and chemical, cosmetic, and nutraceutical manufacturing, which is the process manufacturing categories. They are very unique, have a lot of regulation, and we recommend partners that work regularly in those industries. Before I go too much further into this, I just want to remind you, please subscribe and like the video. We're releasing videos like this fairly regularly on Sabre. There's videos digging into the different types of add-ons, and there's also videos explaining different features of Business Central. Okay. Some popular add-ons, the killer feature of Business Central. So Business Central is built to be a platform onto which other companies can design and add their software. And some of that is done because Microsoft recognizes in the cloud that cloud software tools are designed often to communicate with each other. And so they designed Business Central to be capable of that intercommunication to allow connections with other software packages. For instance, ADP, very popular payroll software package. There's an integrator between Business Central and ADP. Shopify or WooCommerce is maybe a better example. Very popular e-commerce site. There's an integrator to WooCommerce. These are sold through AppSource. And AppSource, in order to publish an app in AppSource, companies have to undergo a certification process with Microsoft, and the apps are installed into Business Central. Business Central is the platform. So as you can see, as of the time of grabbing this image, there were 6,700 and a bit more results for apps. If you filter just to a search of manufacturing, there were 1,378 manufacturing apps specifically for manufacturing in Business Central. So almost 20% of all the apps were manufacturing apps. There's a bunch of categories that I've defined for these apps, and I want to just walk through a quick infographic of products that are Sabre's specific list of preferred add-ons. So I'm not going to dwell on this list, but I am going to mention a few things about it. That Business Central out-of-the-box manufacturing is complete. However, there are areas where customers ask to have extra functionality to make it easier to use for that customer in that space. And these are examples of the apps, the ones in bold, that we typically recommend for those purposes. You'll notice that under scheduling, and I'll focus in on scheduling and WMS, and then we'll move on to the next slide. Under scheduling, there's a free scheduler from a company called InsightWorks, which presents the schedule inside Business Central in a Gantt form, which is adjustable and drag and droppable. It's very simple to install. It's just like installing an app from your iPhone. You go to the app, you say install, it prompts you for a little bit of information. You accept the user license agreement and you click install. You wait while a little spinny installs it, and then Business Central has a Gantt scheduler installed inside of it. 5 minutes and it's done. And that is very easy to use. Boyum Netronic VAPS is a visual advanced production scheduler that does finite capacity planning. Business Central has very limited finite capacity planning capability out of the box. It has some, but it's very limited. Boyum enhances that greatly and makes that finite capacity scheduling much, much better, which is used in environments with complex manufacturing requirements. It's one of the most complex features of manufacturing. The nice thing about Business Central is you're not paying for a scheduler you're not going to use, and you have multiple choices for schedulers. So if the Boyum Netronic scheduler is not the right one for you, you can look at the InsightWorks MX APS or the Cosmo Graphical Planner, and there's more. WMS InsightWorks Warehouse Insights is our recommended WMS solution. Now, WMS might imply to a company or a person who knows it that means that there's no warehouse management in Business Central. That is not correct. There's very sophisticated warehouse management in Business Central. There's not a user interface for a portable computer. Portable computer, if you go into a Home Depot and they're walking around with a pistol grip gun that they can scan shelves and items with and see information, and it probably has a little keypad on it, that's a portable computer. Typically used in warehousing. The portable computers, if you were to run Business Central on them, the user interface is not very helpful for a inventory clerk or inventory technician, and so therefore InsightWorks has developed a much nicer WMS interface for Business Central, but Business Central itself is still handling the bins, the locations, the transfer orders, the warehouse shipments and warehouse picks and putaways. Those are within Business Central. InsightWorks is just offering a gateway to access them. The other thing to note about the InsightWorks, it's actually basically the same price as using a Business Central license, because InsightWorks is able to use a slightly lower cost license from Business Central along with its license, and therefore it isn't particularly expensive. A lot of these add-ons actually end up not adding cost to the project because they allow you to remove full user business licenses and replace them with team member business licenses and achieve the same thing. Industry-specific add-ons, the particular one I want to focus on is something called PrintViz. That's a print manufacturing add-on. In the print industry, they often use the term MIS to describe the features of print estimating and production management and scheduling. PrintViz is a product that Sabre sells that is very specific to the print manufacturing or graphic arts manufacturing industry, and sold by a few partners in North America. We are the partner who has been selling it the longest. Food manufacturing, process manufacturing, and other industries have their own add-ons. I've graded those out just to indicate these are areas we're not that familiar with. We know of them, but we would not claim to be experts. And finally, second last infographic, Sabre sells our own line of add-ons, and these add-ons provide extra features and functionality. If you were to go today, as of the day I record this video, and log in to AppSource, you would find one app called Sabre Production that includes these features. We are planning on splitting them so that they're available separately, and all of our customers under support receive these features. Finally, another app that Sabre sells, and this is our most popular app, is Sabre ETO. It's just an engineer-to-order solution that as I mentioned earlier, the engineered order requires an add-on. This is an add-on, and there are a couple in the market, but ours is well regarded for material control, engineering drawing upload, and status and task management within engineering project manufacturing oriented businesses. Okay, so before we jump into the demo, I do want to have a little chat about what is out of the box, because I've just shown you some add-ons that would go into Business Central. And people might be thinking, but wait a minute, doesn't Business Central have manufacturing capabilities, Rob? And it does. And so I want to go into a couple of areas and just discuss the different features that are in Business Central, starting in manufacturing setup. So Business Central has a full product design capability, including bills of materials and routings, which can be versioned. Bills of materials are integrating with the item list in standard Business Central. These are your parts that you buy or items you keep in inventory. It's also integrating with the routing. The routing side are integrating with the machine centers and capacity calendars. And you are also able to create product families, which are sort of tied into the whole thing, not quite exactly under routings, but product families allow you to have a single operating step that produces multiple finished good parts. It's also co-products in some systems. For items, we have the ability to record items, and those items can have a default BOM and routing associated with them. They have the ability to have standard cost or actual cost. The planning factors, which are all of the factors used by MRP, units of measure capability, very sophisticated units of measure capability, and lot serial tracking, and many other features, but within manufacturing, these are the key ones. In manufacturing execution, where I'm going to actually send orders out to be manufactured. That is done through something called production orders in base manufacturing, although, and I haven't mentioned it here, there's also assembly orders that can be used, and in engineered order manufacturing, projects can be used. I'm going to be focused on the production order and assembly order in this demo. I'm not going to touch on project manufacturing. We have a number of demo videos on project manufacturing under our ETO titles. So look for ETO titled videos in Sabre's YouTube channel, and you'll find videos on ETO. So we talked about product families. Releasing a production order to build a family is possible. That family then would allow you to produce the production order, record your components, but in one step, produce multiple finished parts. You can produce a left and a right from one stamped part, for instance. Statuses, so there are actually 5 statuses, although I've only listed 4 because typically only those 4 are used: planned, firm planned, released, and finished. There's a simulated production order status. Typically that is used in quoting and estimating. I am leaving that for later. Bills of material, you have the ability to do consumption reporting against your bills of material and item tracking. So you can have lot serial tracking within Business Central, and you can output lot serial data in item tracking. You have routings, which can be scheduled, and I have an asterisk with the scheduling because there is a built-in scheduling capability. But again, as we discussed earlier, there are those add-ons that can be added in to make the scheduling even more robust. And then you have capacity reporting, capacity planning. So within the system, when you run the schedule, you can run a capacity report. You could see whether you have enough resources to run your production orders in that period, in lists of information that tell you what your load is on your different resources as percentages by date. Then you have output. I'm going to output the product I've just made. I can report that output, and I can track that, the item tracking data like lot numbers or serial numbers if I'm using that. Those would then go into inventory or come from inventory, which means we need a good warehousing system because most manufacturing solutions need to have good warehousing. So we have the ability to have locations. Locations are main warehouse areas. We have bins. Bins are sub areas within the locations. We have stock keeping units. Stock keeping units are assigned to location item combinations to allow you to have alternate units of measure, bills of material, or replenishment methods by location, as opposed to just one single set of data for an item. You can actually have it split in that way. And then MRP, DRP, so material resource planning and distribution resource planning. So distribution resource planning in Business Central is achieved with a replenishment type of a transfer order, which allows a location with a stock keeping unit to run MRP and say, oh, this is actually replenished by pulling it from another location. And then that location would have demand on it, which MRP would say, oh, maybe you have to run a production order to make this part. So very sophisticated MRP DRP capability. Your locations can be nettable or non-nettable. You can do transfer orders to move things between locations, and you can use that with MRP. You have bins, so you can have item bin level tracking within the bins. You can also have the ability to track the units of measure that are stored in the bins, so you know what units of measure are in the bins. Are they boxes? Are they loose parts, etc.? You can have stock keeping units, which we talked about, and MRP DRP, which we talked about. The warehousing module includes picks, putaways, shipments, receipts, counts, and all of the standard warehousing capabilities. Could you run a 1 million square foot Amazon warehouse with Business Central warehousing? Probably not. If you're looking for a warehousing capability that's for very high volume with scheduling of your staff and scheduling of your docks, and you have to track trucks coming and going to 15-minute or 30-minute increments. It's not really in the system, but there are add-ons that enhance that. And I know there are other partners who specialize in distribution who can handle that stuff. Finally, under MRP DRP, you have the ability to do purchase orders, production orders, assembly orders, or transfer orders as replenishment types of your products. And you have the ability to have fixed reorder policy, a lot for lot, an order, or no reorder policy. So let's go into the manufacturing menus of Business Central, take a look at the product, and see what it looks like in real life. All right, let's jump into Business Central and look at the manufacturing menus of the system. Okay, I'm logged into Business Central as Molly Clark in the Kronos company. And Kronos company of Business Central is the sample company that you can get from Microsoft. Actually, when you install Business Central, you can download an app from AppSource that contains Kronos with manufacturing examples in it. And what I am logged into is a role center for a manufacturing manager. We'll just look quickly through this menu because up here in the main part of the menu, I have production orders, which if I drop down, I'm going to see that I have simulated, planned, firm planned, released, and finished production orders, which are the statuses that I mentioned earlier. I have sales and purchase orders visibility from here, so I have the ability to see sales orders and blanket, sales orders, blanket, purchase orders, blanket, and purchase orders. I have journals. So journals are, if I have, for instance, if I'm going to do an item adjustment, adjusting entries, I can use item journals for that. Output journals to output quantities produced on production orders. Capacity journals to report the labor that went into producing a production order, and consumption journals, etc. So the journals are where I report transactional data or I collect information and I can key it in manually. Obviously, some companies want to use automated data collection on the shop floor, and that's a different matter. Worksheets. So worksheets within the system are generally used to run processes and routines. The most important one, in my opinion, is the planning worksheet, which is the worksheet for running MRP. We'll do a quick demonstration of that. The requisition worksheet is an MRP process that's only for firmed orders. So all it looks at is actual orders that are in the system. It doesn't do any planned orders and then look at the planned orders to create demand. I'll explain that also. Product design. So we talked about this earlier. These are things like the families that I mentioned, routings, the production bombs, and certified and under development products, items, stock keeping units, etc., raw materials. And then capacities, which are setup pages or setup menu choices for things like work centers and machine centers and vendors and shop calendars and stuff like that. So this Kronos environment contains some basic manufacturing information within it. You also notice that I have a demand forecast, transfer orders here that are elevated. So if I go to a page, we'll go to the released production orders page. There's a little bookmark here. And if I click the bookmark on it and I go back to my home center, you'll notice that released production orders are now elevated. So you could take things from these menus that you use all the time, you can add them here. So for instance, I'll go into sales orders a few times during this demo. So let me go into sales orders and I'll add sales orders to the menu so I don't have to keep jumping back and forth. Now sales orders here. So you can customize the menu. It's very easy to do. And then also I have some actions here. And so my actions include things like create an item, create a planned production order, or firm plan, create a production bomb or routing. And also some of the actions I can do is run reports, like I can run a capacity or production or Power BI reports. And there's a bunch of Power BI reports that come from Microsoft. I'm not going to demonstrate these. They have to be configured and set up, which I haven't done yet. But basically, as you can see, there's a lot of Power BI reports, and they're modifiable. You get the report, you can take them and modify them and change them around. One last thing I'm going to do on the menus is I'm going to click here in what I call the hamburger, and this gives me a view of all of the manufacturing features that the manufacturing manager has access to in their menu. Now, if this menu system for the manufacturing manager isn't the right one, you're more in the order entry side of the business, you can go into your settings and you can modify by choosing the role that you're performing. So if I'm a sales order processor, so I'm somebody who's entering sales orders into the system, all I do is I choose that role center. That'll reconfigure the menu now. And what I'm getting here is a menu for somebody who is a sales order processor. So they have a completely different set of choices up here at the top of their menu. So you'll notice sales has a lot more stuff in it. It's got invoices and return orders. Purchasing also same. Inventory has a different set, has posted documents in here. So now this is where I would go and look at historical sales orders, closed sales order archives, sales quotes, etc. And it has a Shopify link as well. So if I'm using Shopify, I can integrate it with Business Central. So you'll notice that depending on the role the person's following, they're going to use a different one of these role centers. I can also personalize, so I can turn personalization on within the system, and that allows me to move things around, change their positions, add extra elements to the screen. Like if I want to put a Power BI dashboard in here, I can add more Power BI data. I'll turn that off. I'm going to go back to settings, and I'm going to go back to the manufacturing manager. There we go. And turn that on. If you want to learn more about how these role centers work, I cover them in my overview of Business Central. So let's go back. What I want to talk about now is the difference between production orders and assembly orders within Business Central. So we'll go back into the system and we'll jump in back in here, and we're going to go into the item list. So the items are under product design, and I have the items list. I'm going to use this a few times, so let's pin it like we did before. And what I want to look for is I want to look for things that have an assembly BOM. So I'll just sort the assembly BOM column. I guess I want to descend it, so I get the yeses at the top. And you'll notice I have this conference bundle 2-8, 1965W. That's the item number, so I'm going to click on that. This is an item. It's a bundle, so it contains 8 of these chairs. It has this table in it, and it's green. I guess the color is green. What I can do under the more options, I can look at the related, and I can look at the bill of materials for this, and there's an assembly BOM. So I can click on assembly BOM. Now, another way to get to an assembly BOM is if I go down here to replenishment, the replenishment section, it has an assembly area. It says there's an assembly BOM and a yes. And if I click on the assembly BOM, it's also going to bring me to the assembly BOM. So this item is a kit that maybe the shipping department puts together when they're packing it. Maybe it's something that is delivered to the customer and then installed. But the concept of an assembly BOM is that it is a it's really a very simple bill of material for manufacturing something. And this example is one where I'm taking a physical product that I use, that I buy, and it's complete, and I can sell it as an item, and I'm kitting it together. But you can easily use an assembly BOM as a light manufacturing process. So if we go in and we were to look at something like our coffee machine. So what we're going to do is we're going to look for something with a production BOM, and we'll sort on production BOM. So we have this AirPot and AirPot Duo. Let me just go into the AirPot Duo BOM. So I'm going to go into the production BOM. So there's no assembly BOM. I'm going to the production BOM for it. This is the production BOM for an AirPot Duo. Now, production BOMs have certified statuses. They have version numbers, and in the production BOM, though, I still have item number, quantity per, unit of measure. Now, I have scrap percent in the routing link code here. But an assembly order, I could make this AirPot Duo as an assembly. And I would just, in the assembly BOM for it, I would add the same items with the same quantity per the same pieces. So let's go back to an assembly BOM. We'll do the same thing here. We'll sort by the assembly BOM and get the conference package back up here. And in this assembly BOM that we have item or resource. So we have a type of row. We have a number, which is an item number. We have the description, the assembly BOM, which I'm not sure why it says no in it. Actually, it's kind of funny. Oh, these don't have assembly BOMs. That's why. So you can have assembly BOMs in themselves or assemblies, and a quantity per and a unit of measure. Now, what it doesn't have is it doesn't have a scrap percent. It doesn't have that routing link code. And it has resources in it, which are resources are generally either people or machines that are used for assembly purposes. Whereas in a production BOM, it's going to have a routing. And the routing serves the purpose of keeping track of the steps that something has to go through. So that's the problem, if you will, with assemblies, is that they can either be ready to start, started, or finished. There is really no, so open, released, or finished. When they're finished, they're back flushed, so they only allow back flushing. They don't allow any other type of manual flushing or forward flushing, the items that are in the assembly. And the resource is also back flushed. So as soon as you finish the assembly order, in this case, if I made one of these, it would take 1 Antwerp conference table out of inventory, 8 Sydney swivel chairs, and 1 hour of Catherine's time would be booked to the cost of this job. And that would generate a cost for this conference bundle, and it would generate a conference bundle would be put into inventory while these are removed from inventory. Now, if I go back to my AirPot, which is the coffee maker, I have a routing number for the coffee maker as well. If I go into the routing, what I'm going to see is I'm going to see something that looks a little bit like a bomb in that it has a header with information on it. It has a certified status. It has version numbers. It has an active version. But now my lines are actually work centers, and they have setup time and run time. These are in minutes, I believe. And I'm going to show in a few minutes, I'm going to show how the personalization, I can add fields here so I can find out exactly what unit of measure is being used on this. But this work center 100 has to be done first. This is a serial routing, which means it's done in sequence. And that means the body assembly is done first. It takes 20 minutes to set up, and it takes 15 minutes per AirPot to make it. And then when that's done, I can report that that's complete. I can report even how many I've made that have finished body assembly, and I could start working on the electrical wiring even while I still have more to work on body assembly. So the status of the production order can be some of it in body assembly, some of it in electrical wiring, some of it in testing. And I can keep track of how many are in there by using the reporting of the output from each of these steps. So this work center can have an output of how many body assemblies were made. This machine center can have an output of how many electrical wirings were done, etc. We'll talk about work centers and machine centers in a little while. But that's really sort of the difference between production orders and assembly orders. And there's one more. So I'm going to show a sales order. I'm going to create a sales order. And I'm just going to do a new sales order, and we're going to do that for any random customer. So we'll do it for the School of Fine Art here. And the School of Fine Art wants to order that conference bundle. Now notice while I start typing, I'm not typing a part number. I'm just typing in the word conference. I'm starting it, and it's automatically filtering out the things that have conference in the description or the item number. So I'm going to choose this conference bundle, which I believe was our green conference bundle. And I'm going to say I want 2 of them. And I'm going to add 2 quantity assemble to order. And I'm going to tab off that. And it says it's working on it. It's doing something. And now what it's done is it's created a reservation entry and an assembly order. Okay, so I can go back here. And I can, in this assemble to order, I can click this ellipsis button, and it shows me, hey, look, you've got an assembly order that's being created. This is the assemble to order lines for this item. So there's now an assembly order created for this, and it says I need 1 of this table and 8 of these green chairs and 1 hour of installation to make 1 of these assemblies. But this is for quantity 2, so therefore I'm going to need 2 tables, 16 chairs, and 2 hours. And this is automatically linked to the sales order. When I ship this line, that will close the assembly order. Now, you may say, okay, well, where's that assembly order? I'm going to do the search here. Now, this is a common thing Business Central consultants do. Rather than use the menu, and I notice a lot of clients do this too, we use the search because if the item that we're looking for isn't on the menu, we can still search for assembly orders in the system. There is 1 assembly order. I'm going to expand the page here. There's 1 assembly order here. Quantity remaining is 2, quantity 2. Notice the item number here is the one we chose. If I click this order and I open it up, I'm going to see an assembly order with a due date, with a quantity remaining on it, with that it is an assemble to order. So if I click the yes, it should open up the sales order. So they're linked to each other. Now what I've done is right on the sales order line without any extra work. I didn't have to click any buttons. I didn't have to create an assembly order. I just fill in the quantity you assemble to order. When I do that, it automatically creates the assembly order. The assembly order is now created. These assembly orders do not need to be assembled to order. So I can actually use MRP to look at my current demand, look at my current inventory on hand, and generate assembly orders through the planning worksheet. And it'll create assembly orders to replenish my inventory. So if I am assembling my coffee maker and I decide, that assembly process doesn't need to be using production, I can just do it as an assembly with all the parts, and I can send it to the right departments, and I don't really need to track how many are in each department because it's easy for me to make these coffee makers. Maybe very small. I'm in my garage and I'm only making a few at a time. Assembly orders would work perfectly for that. I've even used assembly orders at customers that are doing automotive stamping, believe it or not, but they're doing it in very small volumes for very niche aftermarket replacement parts. And so they don't really need the full capability of production because they're just laser cutting a part or plasma cutting a part off of a sheet. They're sticking it in a press with a die, stamping it, trimming the edge and shipping it out. And they can do that in just an hour or two as long as they have the materials and they're using assembly orders for that purpose. Okay, let's go back and talk about items, bombs, and routing. So we've looked at this a little bit, but let's go back and look at it a bit more. So in the product design, I've got items, production bombs, and routings here. We're going to start with items. And what I want to look for is I want to look for some of the components that go in the coffee maker. So the coffee maker begins with SP-BOM. That's all the part numbers that are related to the coffee maker. So let's look at the housing here. So I'm going to open up the housing of the coffee maker. So the coffee maker housing is an item category code parts. It is, I've got 50 of them in inventory right now. It's listed as a raw material here under cost and posting. So if I open it up and expand this out and take a look at what's in here, it's a FIFO costed part. So my choices for items are that they can be FIFO, LIFO, specific, average, or standard. By the way, do not use average cost. This is something that even Microsoft says. It is very tricky and has caused problems in the past. So my recommendation is you're using FIFO or standard cost. Specific cost is used for situations where the part is lot tracked. So if I have a lot number and I use specific, it means when I use that lot, the cost of that lot will be used in a FIFO manner, but only that lot. So you can see that there's a lot of features in Business Central from the inventory management and inventory costing point of view. I'm going to collapse this cost and posting. I'm going to go to prices and sales. So I have unit prices, sales prices, and discounts that I can create, sales unit of measure. So in other words, if I were to sell this housing AirPod in boxes of 10, I could create a sales unit of measure box of 10, and I could choose that as my default. And when I create a sales order, it'll say you have to sell it in 10s. You'll notice, by the way, there's an interesting thing that just popped up here. So service blocked is an option that can be used, that basically specifies the item cannot be entered on service items, service contracts, service documents. But I don't know what that is. So I could click Ask Copilot, and Copilot's going to go out. And this is an interesting use of Copilot. It's going to go out and it's going to try and find answers to that question. So it's actually searching the internet right now to try and figure out what the answer or where the help file is that explains what service blocks means. And it comes back with a more detailed explanation. It's really neat, actually. Very new feature. Sales block means I can't sell this product. So you have the ability within the system to block the item. You have it entirely blocked, which means you can't use it at all. This item then becomes locked. It's obsolete. You can just say sales blocked. I can't sell it. And then if I go down into replenishment, there's also going to be a purchasing blocked here. And I believe there's a production blocked, but that might not be here. So I can block it for purchasing, and I can have a different purchase unit of measure of that item. Getting into some inventory management, I can purchase the item, I can produce it on a production order, or I can produce it with an assembly order. This is used by MRP. so that when I'm low on this item, when MRP calculates, it'll basically use this replenishment system. Now, interesting, I can have a different replenishment system by warehouse. So I have the same item in one warehouse and it's replenished with a purchase order, and another item in another warehouse and it's replenished by a transfer order. You have to turn on multiple warehousing to show transfer order in this list. It's actually generally when you set it up, you're setting it up with something called a SKU, a stock keeping unit. So you create a stock keeping unit so that you can do that. And the stock keeping unit is basically this item as defined in that location. For production, if I have it as a production order, I have a routing number and a BOM number that I can assign. We'll look at an item that has a routing number and a BOM number in a minute. I can have a scrap percent. That's the scrap that is lost when I produce the part or buy it. Actually, you can have a scrap basically on purchase. So if I get 100 of these and I have 5% scrap, I only net 95. I can have a lot size as well, and the lot size is the default size that it's going to use for standard cost. So if I'm going to make this, if I'm going to use a production order to make this item, and I put a lot size of 50, it means for purposes of calculating the standard cost of this item by rolling up costs and using the costing worksheet, the standard cost worksheet, use 50 items in my production order. You'll notice I have a flushing method, a default flushing method for this item. So when I put this item on a production order, I use it in production, I am by default going to use manual flushing, rounding precision, and we talked about this. For MRP purposes, which we're going to get to next, all of the settings required for MRP are also on the item card, but we're going to cover MRP in a minute, so I'm going to skip from there back to looking at a production BOM. So let's look at an item that has a production BOM, and we're going to go into the item. So this is the AirPot, the coffee maker. A little picture of the coffee maker, the AirPot coffee maker. So the AirPot coffee maker is a different item category. The other one was called parts. It is not a raw material. So if we go into the costs and posting, it's a retail general posting group, and it's in the finished inventory posting group. So it's a finished good, it's not a raw material. And that has to do with accounting and how accounting handles it. I have basically the same capabilities. You'll notice this one is replenished with production order, has a lot size of 10, has a rounding precision of 0.0001, and has a manual flushing method. It's got a routing number and a production BOM number associated with this item. So I can jump into the BOM of the item by going in here and clicking show details, and that's going to show me, oh, in this case it's the routing. I mentioned earlier that I'm going to hide these notes here because I don't need them. So you'll notice I can have notes about my routing, and included in the notes I can put the note in. It is possible also to put links connected to this routing, so I can link documents, drawings, things like that in here. So I'm going to hide that screen, and what I want to do is I want to add the setup unit of measure and the runtime unit of measure. So I go and I personalize the page. So I'm running, this is how hard it is, gotta go get the developers to do this. Add the field, find the runtime unit of measure code, and drag it in and stick it someplace. You need to get that little red line where you want it. And then I'm going to do, is it slow or is it, yeah, it just was slow. I'm going to do the same with the setup unit of code. So it's not super fast to change it. It gets faster if you use it more. And then you just say done, and now I've added the units of measure in so I can see what unit of measure this is. So I've got my setup time is in minutes and my runtime is in minutes. The system supports also wait time, move time. It supports a fixed scrap quantity and a scrap factor. So what's fixed scrap quantity? In the body assembly, let's say, for the sake of argument, that I do an inspection of the injection molded parts, and I find that 10% of the time those injection molded parts are scrapped. So I can have a scrap factor at that. But also, I have to destroy the first injection molded part I get. I have to cut it open or something to check and make sure that that part is correct. Or maybe if I'm assembling the coffee maker, maybe I assemble the coffee maker and I hit it with a really high electrical voltage to see if it catches fire, and that's a test I have to do, and I have to just do this destructive test on one coffee maker out of every batch. So I could put a fixed quantity in here, scrap quantity for that destructive test. Now, it's not going to let me make this change because this is a certified routing. So I'd have to uncertify it to be able to make that change. I'm just going to refresh my screen and revert things back to what they were. So I have the ability to put in work centers or machine centers. We're going to talk about that quickly. A work center is kind of the higher level of manufacturing resource capacity. The machine center is a more detailed. So a machine center belongs to a work center. A work center can have a capacity that's more than one. A machine center is a capacity of one. So there can be, so each machine center you create is a thing, like a CNC machine, CNC mill. A work center could be CNC mills. And you don't have to create machine centers. So you could say, I have 3 CNC mills. They're all the same. Work center, CNC mills, quantity 3. You're good. That's all you need to do. If they're all the same cost, then that's it. If you have individual mills that are different, they can do different things. You don't want to use just that one work center. Then you can create those 3 mills, add them to the work center. You can put the work center on your routing, but then somebody later scheduling it actually changes it on the production order. We'll get into that. Okay. We also have the BOM. So we talked about the BOM. I can go in and do the same thing. I can go show details on the BOM, and I'm going to see the BOM bill of material for this item with all of the material requirements. Now, what is the routing link code? If I create a routing link code here, and there is a table where I create them, and let's call that the 100 routing link code, and I add these items to 100 routing link code, and I go back to the routing, and I do the same. So I'll go back to details. So this is routing 100. So I add a routing link code. It should be over here. It is not. So this needs personalization to add the routing link code into this table. There it is right there. So I would just drag this guy. Oh, that's probably why. Let me pull that in. I'll click done on that now. So I have a routing link code in here. There it is. So if I put 100 in here, oh, there, see, 100 assembling is a routing link code. So if I decertify, let's just show how this works. So I'll decertify that and call that routing link code 100, and I'll recertify it. So I've added routing link code 100 to the body assembly, and I'll go back to the BOM and I'll do the same. I'll decertify it quickly, and I'll add 100 here to a few of them. So you set this 100 up wherever you want it. So I'll do these 4 here, are in routing link code 100. What that means is these 4 materials are required for this operation. Now, the other materials have no routing link code, so therefore they would be considered to be required prior to that operation. But it's really common to go in and put a routing link code in for each thing. It's not every customer needs it, but if you are having your coffee maker and the components are located at different work centers, and so you use those components at that work center, you have little shelves, and you pull the stuff you need at the work center when you make that, then the routing link codes allow you to define that those materials are used at those work centers, that they are not required until the job reaches those work centers, and it's a little bit more powerful. So that's the items, the BOMs, and the routings. Now I want to talk about MRP and MPS. So I'm going to go back to the home page, and I'm going to go into the worksheets, and I'm going to look at the planning worksheet. But first, what we're going to do is we're going to put a sales order in. So we're going to go to our sales orders. We have the School of Fine Arts sales order we were playing with earlier. Let's change this a bit. So I'm going to take this and say I want it on, let's say May 15th. It's going to update the delivery date, and it's going to cancel. Yep, I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm actually going to clear out this assembly order. It'll probably be annoyed at me for doing this, but we'll do this anyway. and I'm going to change this item. So I'm going to change it to the AirPod, our coffee maker. So I'll just choose the AirPod, and I'll say, it's telling me the shipment date's early. That's fine. I'll say I need 5. So I need 5 of these AirPods for the School of Fine Art on 5/15. Now, you'll notice it said it's before the scheduled start date. So let me go back here. And, well, actually, we're going to run MRP for this. So this is late. The customer wanted this on 5/15. It's 6/4. So let's run MRP and see what happens. I'm going to go into the default planning worksheet, and I'm going to go to prepare and calculate a regenerative plan. I'm going to start it, well, let's say 6/4, June 4th, like it said. And then we'll go until the end of July. So what should happen, I'm not going to use a forecast. I can use forecasts in my MRP. So if I created a sales forecast that said I should make 100 of these coffee makers a month, every month for the year, and another coffee maker, this is how many the customers want, I can put that forecast in, and I can cut off the forecast. So I could say, you know what, it's too late now. I'm not going to consider the forecast. If it's actually June 4th, I'm not going to consider the June forecast. By now the orders would have come in. I'll just start it on July 1st. So I would put July 1st in here. I can turn on or off the respective planning parameters for exceptions, and I can stop when there's an error. I can let it run even though there's some errors. Let me click it and let it go. So what it's going to do is it's going to go through all of the production orders that are needed, and what the ones that already exist, and the ones that I need to create that have maybe for orders that have come in. And what it's telling me is I have an emergency order now because that order is late. It should have been shipped in in May, and it's like, well, you got to do this now. So it's creating new emergency orders, and it doesn't want to create the emergency orders unless I go and I take a look at them. Now, what happens? It happens that I also created a second sales order that hadn't been processed yet, or a purchase order if it's a purchase order. So these are the production orders that it is identifying need to be created. So it's giving me the new production order numbers. So if I go back and I go to that sales order and I say, you know what, this is not really, I mistyped the date. This was supposed to be June 17 that I need it. It'll update the requested ship date on all the lines. So there's a requested ship date. I think it's the planned shipment date here, which is corresponding to this requested ship date. And that is what is being used by the planning process. So now I'll go back to my MRP, and I'm going to clear the MRP. So I want to just delete everything in this screen. So I'm just going to go in here. I'm going to hit delete on my keyboard. And maybe that won't work. Maybe I have to click the button. And I'm going to delete this. So it's deleting all the lines, because these are just suggestions. This is what the system's suggesting. I'm going to calculate a regenerative plan now, and I'm going to let it roll. And what should happen is I don't have any emergencies. I may, depends on what my lead time is, but I don't have any emergencies. I have to build some product to some new orders that have come in, and it's telling me, hey, make some new, some AirPods on the 6th, for the 17th, due the 17th. So that's my order, which I wanted to ship on the 18th, and some for the 23rd. So it's saying you need 15, but you only need 5 right away, and the other 10 you can wait a while. And then there's also an AirPod Lite that needs to be made, an AirPod Duo that needs to be made. So it's telling me to place production orders to make these things with these due dates. And then it's saying, oh, and you need the materials. And it's backwards scheduling the materials. So the housing for the AirPod, it's scheduling 10 days before the build of the AirPod on the 6th. So that is probably because the AirPod housing has a lead time. So I can click on that, and I might be able to see, yeah, we're in a 1 week time bucket. And yeah, it does not have a lead time, but but it's probably default trying to bring it in early. If I go in and I look at this has it has a 7-day safety lead time. So basically, I've told the system, bring any materials in for this 7 days early. So that's why we're getting this one 7 days early. So what's happening is the system is giving me a prediction of the purchase orders and production orders that are needed. I'm going to close this detail window so you can see a little bit more. So it's giving me a prediction, and it's allowing me to just say, yeah, carry out the action message. So if I go into my home screen here, I can carry out action messages, and this is going to automatically create these 4 production orders, and it's going to make purchase orders. I can choose to make the purchase order, or make the purchase order and print it, or copy to requisition worksheet. This would be where I'm a production planner, but I don't really do the purchasing. So I want to send it to another worksheet where a buyer is going to log in, and they might make decisions to change the vendor. But I'm okay with it. It'll have a default vendor on all these purchases that I've set up on the item card. So it's just going to go ahead and bam. It's going to create a bunch of production orders and a bunch of purchase orders. And you can see that it went through. Actually, it might only create 1 purchase order because I think they all have the same supplier. And now, if I go into these firm plan production orders, here are these production orders that were just created. So, the MRP MPS system, so MPS is Master Production Schedule. When I ran it, it created the master production schedule of new firm plan production orders, which I would then go in as I decide it's time to start making this. So if I look at the due date of these and I sort it by due date, I'll say, okay, that one we should start making today. I'm going to take this one and I'm going to change the status to released, and that's going to send that sucker out to the floor to be manufactured, and generally that would come into the released production orders, and somebody would go into this released production orders list, see the new production order, and print the paperwork for it, send it to the floor. It could be that your job is to print the paperwork from the firm plan before you release it, but now you can see I have 4 released production orders and 11 firm plan production orders. So the system lets me run the MPS, create the production orders, but it simultaneously has created the purchase orders necessary to supply the materials for those production orders. The last thing before we leave the MRP MPS is we're going to look at the items again. We're going to pick one of those items, like let's say this warming plate. There are settings in here under planning that you configure so that, let's say, it's really inefficient to order 5 warming plates at a time. I could put in minimum order quantities. So when I place this purchase order, don't order less than 50 because it's inefficient. I have to pay a premium if I get less than 50. Maybe they come in boxes of 50. I can have what's called lot for lot, but I can have lot accumulation periods. Look forward 2 weeks and look at what I need to buy over the next 2 weeks and place a purchase order for that much. Then look out maybe every week. Look out another 2 weeks and another 2 weeks. I can have safety stock. I want to keep at least 10 of these warming plates in stock at all times. If this is a longer lead time part, I might want to have those safety stocks. I can have safety lead time. Place my purchase order early. I need this material. Assume I need this material earlier than what MRP is calculating. I can have order multiples. Comes in boxes of 50. So don't try and make an order for 75. Make an order for 50, or if it's more than 50, make an order for 100. So I have a lot of settings here that control that MRP process, and that is really the most important part of this, is understanding that that MRP MPS process is all tied to those order planning rules. Okay, finally what we're going to do is look at production order execution. Okay, so we're going to take a look at, and we're going to go through this fairly quickly because it's a very tedious kind of manual, like data entry kind of approach, not manual, but data entry approach. And what I want to do is I want to look at this release production order for 20 AirPot Duos. And I want to go in and go through the 3 ways of reporting the consumption and production of this. So the first one is something called the production journal. The production journal allows me to report the consumption and the output from this production order. So I have 20 that I'm supposed to produce. I could say, okay, while I was working, I damaged a filter basket, so I actually needed 21, and a circuit board was bad, so I needed 21 of that. So I can update these quantities. I could say, you know what, I was able to produce 20, but I scrapped one. So maybe this is 19. I produced 19 and scrapped one out of this. The production order is finished, and I could post that. And that's gonna consume 20 and 21 for these two. It's gonna output 19 and report the one scrap. So these 19 are gonna be costed based on having these 20 and 21. I could put a setup time and a runtime in as well. But for this one, this is a pretty basic one. This is the sort of the easy way to report production very quickly for a production order. Okay, so I'm gonna leave the production journal and go back, and let's take the other way to do it. So under the journals, I have a bunch of journals here. There are 2 that are really important here. One is the output journal, and the other is the consumption journal. So if I go to the output journal, and let me pick a different, let me clear this off. I'll clear these examples out of here and delete them. Let me pick this reservoir assembly order. So what I can do with this reservoir assembly order, it is, because it has multiple lines on it, I'm going to choose the item. There you go, I got the operations. I can choose for operation 10, and I can copy this down and choose operation 20 and copy again and choose operation 30. And basically what I could do is I could report for each of these operations, how long did it take? Normally you can also put setup time in. So I think that field is just missing. I would personalize it and add setup time. So I could put setup time, run time. I can indicate how much I made at that step. So this reservoir I think is to make 20. So I could say, yeah, I output 20 here, 20 here, 20 here. And it took me 65 minutes to make these 20, 28 minutes to make, not 289 minutes. And for the testing, maybe it takes, half a minute per, so 10 minutes, and I could do that. And I could post that. And what I'm doing, because testing is the last operation, it'll output 20 to inventory. So the last operation outputs to inventory if you are recording multiple operations. The consumption journal is kind of the same idea, but it's for the consumed material. So let's delete these again. So I'll start with a fresh one. I'll show you how you would do it. So in the consumption journal, you would calculate consumption. You run this little utility. You pick the order. This is a released production order for the reservoir assembly. Same one we were doing the output on. Click OK, and bam, what it does is it fills in how many you need of each item. So I need 1 reservoir, or 20 reservoirs, 20 heating elements, 40 water tubing sets, and 1 reservoir test kit. So the 1 reservoir test kit is a fixed quantity, and it's destructively used during the testing process. So I need the test kit, I use it, but then I have to throw it out for some reason. And again, you just fill in the quantities. Maybe you had a little bit of scrap on the heating element and some of the hoses. So you fill in the quantities you needed or that you consumed on that production, or you post it. So that concludes the presentation of the manufacturing demo and overview for Business Central. There's way more depth to this than what I've covered in this video, which is already over an hour in length. I apologize for any of you who've been going through this with me together. But hopefully I've given you a good kind of summary and overview of how the system works. So first of all, thank you so much for watching to the end. It really helps our algorithm, actually, if you do watch to the end of the video. It also helps very much if you like or comment on a video. So I encourage you to leave comments. And of course, please subscribe to Sabre's YouTube channel to be informed of new videos. Thank you so much. Have a great day.